Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 8 Part 20 based on novel. So let's start. Wave after wave of majestic and vast yuan power maniacally unfurled from Lindong's body like surging tides. Its vastness caused innumerable people to raise their eyebrows. Under the attentive gazes from the surroundings, Lindong slowly clenched his fists. As he felt the surging power akin to a flood flowing within his body, a satisfied arc started to appear at the corners of his mouth. The great desolation scripture he had unleashed today was undoubtedly stronger than previously when he fought with Wang Yang. In addition, the most critical factor was that with his physical body becoming even more tyrannical, the amount of violent and wild energies he was able to withstand far exceeded the past. The current him was at the true peak of his battle capabilities. You have truly exceeded my expectations. Yuan Kang lowered his head, his gaze locking onto Lindong, who was giving off a majestic aura. Murderous intent started to converge in his eyes, growing thicker and thicker. The strength that Lindong displayed caused him to feel increasingly surprised, making his murderous intent rise higher and higher. It was best to get rid of an opponent with such amazing potential as early as possible. The Jutong incident from back then, once was enough. However, no matter what methods you use, this place will be your burial ground today. Yuan Kang's eyes suddenly turned frosty as yuan power whizzed out of him and blotted the skies. With a clench of his fist, a black metal sword appeared within his hand in a flash. A tremble shook through the sword, before countless strands of swift and fierce sword chi screamed out. Akin to the stars that filled the skies, they converged on Lindong. It seemed like Yuan Kang could no longer restrain the murderous intent in his heart and had finally made his move. However, in the face of this attack, Lindong did not display a single trace of fear. He raised his head and laughed at the heavens. With a wave of his sleeves, the burning sky cauldron above his head instantly started to revolve. Pillars of blazing hot flames whizzed out, completely evaporating the incoming sword chi. Yuan Kang, if you want to kill me, you will have to show some of your true capabilities. These puny methods will only throw the reputation of the Yuan Gate's three little kings. Lindong's body moved and landed on the burning sky cauldron. He stared at Yuan Kang, sneering as his words resounded across the skies. As his words of mockery rang out, chilling intent gushed in Lindong's eyes. With a thought, the burning sky cauldron rapidly expanded, transforming into an enormous cauldron that hovered in the sky. Crimson light started to gather around it. Faintly, a blazing fire array started to take form below the enormous cauldron, while an extremely wild and violent fluctuation started to spread outwards. Burning sky array. As he gazed at the glowing array below the burning sky cauldron, Yuan Kang's eyes immediately hardened. Obviously, he had recognized this array. Planning to use this array to deal with me, huh? Yuan Kang's gaze turned icy cold. They had previously been trapped in the burning sky cauldron, and naturally knew how formidable the burning sky array was. Previously, they had managed to successfully pass through it as the array was not activated. Now that Lindong had control over the burning sky cauldron, it was natural for him to be able to activate the burning sky array. Hence, if Yuan Kang was trapped within the array, it would become rather troublesome for him. As if it will be that easy. Yuan Kang was not a person who would sit and wait for death. Upon seeing that Lindong was setting up the burning sky array to deal with him, he ferociously stepped forward. A dozen after-images swept across the sky. In a flash, they appeared before Lindong. The black metal swords in their hands contained enough power to turn a peak 9 Yuan Nirvana stage expert into a bloody mist, as they fiercely pierced towards Lindong's throat like lightning. However, Lindong did not panic as he watched the attacking Yuan Kang. With a clench of his fist, majestic yuan power flew out, and a fissure appeared in the skies above. An illusionary figure appeared within the fissure as it extended a gigantic hand. Great desolate imprisoning heavenly hand. The extremely gigantic and enormous hand that appeared contained a berserk fluctuation that far surpassed the past. Shattering the air, it furiously patted down on Yuan Kang. Kai? As the violent gales pressed down on him, Yuan Kang's gaze turned frosty. With a powerful slash of his metal sword, a gigantic sword chi that was almost 100 feet long shot out. A single strike cleaved the gigantic hand. At this time, the overbearing strength of the initial profound life stage was thoroughly revealed. Swoosh! Just as Yuan Kang sliced the gigantic hand apart with a single slash of his word, green light was suddenly reflected in his eyes. Like a spectre, the green light figure appeared in front of him. Its fingers were like spears, turning into a hailstorm as they instantly enveloped all of the fatal spots on Yuan Kang's body. Kai Kai! Images of green light fingers seemed to cover the sky as they appeared. Every finger was brimming with extraordinarily violent power. In the face of these fingers, even air itself exploded. You courting death? Seeing that Lin Dong was relying on his bare hands to attack him at close quarters, the murderous intent in Yuan Kang's eyes instantly blossomed. The metal sword jerked, transforming into sword images that viciously slashed at the finger images. Clang clang clang. As the sword slashed down on the fingers, fresh blood did not splatter as expected. Instead, clear and distinct metallic clangs resounded out. Sparks exploded, causing the hearts of the onlookers to jump in fear and trepidation. Such a powerful physical body. As the metal sword hacked at the finger, the amount of force that resulted from their contact caused Yuan Kang's pupils to tighten a little. After truly crossing hands, he could finally sense how tyrannical Lin Dong's physical body was. Even the heavenly grade soul treasure sword in his hand could not do much against Lin Dong. Roar! As Lin Dong neared Yuan Kang, the glowing green dragon tattoo on his skin seemed to float out. A deep dragon roar resounded through Lin Dong's body as he unleashed the most violent assault at Yuan Kang. Punches, kicks, elbows, headbutts, every part of his body had seemingly transformed into a weapon. His physical onslaught was akin to a torrential hailstorm, where every strike was swift and fierce, enveloping every vital point on Yuan Kang's body. Bang bang bang. Lin Dong's mastery of the green heaven materialized dragon art was obviously increasing. This made his physical body all the more powerful. Every single action he made would create a strange rumbling noise that would faintly ring out of his body. These were the roars created by the power produced when his bones rubbed together. Facing the extremely explosive and violent barehanded attacks of Lin Dong, it was obvious that Yuan Kang was initially somewhat unable to adjust. After a period of fighting, he appeared to be in a slightly miserable state. However, Yuan Kang was no pushover. After being pushed to such a state in the initial exchange, he rapidly stabilized his footing. Boundless Yuan power flooded out, transforming into a giant Yuan power clock behind him. Dong dong dong. The gigantic clock wrapped around Yuan Kang's body. However, Lin Dong did not show any signs of stopping. A hailstorm of attacks frantically landed on the clock. Instantly, clear clock dongs continuously sounded out and echoed across the sky. Countless people looked in astonishment at the crazy barrage of attacks raining down in the skies. They could feel the frightening power that every punch and kick from Lin Dong contained. The fight that was happening before their eyes was so explosive that it made their blood boil. Dong dong. As the chiming sounds of the clock continued to ring, a malevolent expression gradually appeared on Lin Dong's face. Under his crazy and furious attacks, cracks started to appear on the body of the clock. Break. A sinister look flooded Lin Dong's eyes. In the next instant, his fist suddenly paused for an instant, before punching in an even more explosive and violent manner. A green dragon tattoo screamed out from his body, transforming into a gigantic dragon that accompanied Lin Dong's fist as it rumbled out, and heavily impacted against the body of the clock. Bang! A exceptionally ear-piercing sound erupted as the sky was filled with extremely wild and violent fluctuations. Under the innumerable gazes from the surroundings, the clock shattered and exploded. As the clock exploded, violent energies screamed out. Two rather miserable figures shot backwards. Only after taking a dozen steps backwards did they barely manage to stabilize themselves. As everyone watched at the explosive battle in the sky, quite a few of them were secretly speechless. The intensity of the previous exchange had already far exceeded the battle between Yuan Kang and Chen Gui. Anyone could see that the two people in the sky were truly having a death match. Every single time they attacked, not a single trace of mercy could be seen. It was obvious that both of them had the intention of exterminating the other. However, being able to force Yuan Kang to such a state, this Lin Dong is truly fearsome. Under the innumerable gazes from the surroundings, Lin Dong forcefully stabilized his body that had shot backwards from the previous exchange. He shot a glance at the many white scars that had appeared on his body. These were left by the sword in Yuan Kang's hands. However, the attacks that were easily capable of killing a peak 9 Yuan Nirvana stage expert could only leave these white scars on his body. Delightful. Lin Dong grinned and stretched his body. This was the first time that he could unleash his bare-handed attacks to his heart's content. Next up, he shot a sinister smile at Yuan Kang, before raising his head to look at the gigantic cauldron in the sky. While Lin Dong was tangling with Yuan Kang, the burning sky array under the cauldron had already successfully formed. "It's time for you to experience the might of the burning sky array," Lin Dong said with a sinister laugh. Within the depths of unique devil region, the Yang brothers were reduced to ashes by his burning sky array. Hence, this array should be able to leave Yuan Kang battered and exhausted. Swoosh! Following the appearance of the evil grin on Lin Dong's face, crimson light suddenly erupted from the burning sky cauldron in the sky. In the next moment, it proceeded to envelope a Yuan Kang who had an ugly expression on his face. A gigantic blazing light array descended from the sky. Under the innumerable gazes from the surroundings, it enveloped Yuan Kang. Immediately, the rays from the array condensed into a spiraling flame barrier that rose upwards, thoroughly trapping Yuan Kang within. Is this the burning sky array? On the mountain peak, Ling Qingshu gazed at the blazing array that had trapped Yuan Kang. A sliver of astonishment could not help but flash past her eyes. She also had an extremely deep impression of the burning sky array within the burning sky ancient stash. Never did she imagine that Lin Dong could actually summon it. It was obvious that Ling Qingshu had recognized the burning sky cauldron. She had similarly seen the frightening power that the scarlet-robed man had unleashed when he used it to suppress the black fog creature. Although the current Lin Dong was obviously unable to bring out the same power that the scarlet-robed man had, Yuan Kang's strength was similarly far inferior to the black fog creature. This Lin Dong truly has endless aces up his sleeve. Even Yuan Kang has been pushed to a somewhat miserable state, exclaimed Wu Kun with a sigh. There was some flavor of admiration within his voice. They were very clear about Yuan Kang's strength. However, in the fight before their eyes, not only did Lin Dong not fall into a disadvantageous position, contrary to expectations, he had trapped Yuan Kang within the array instead. Such capability was something that no one present could deny. I've said since the beginning that Big Brother Lin Dong will not be afraid of Yuan Kang. Su-Ru could not help but say with some satisfaction. As her words rang out, she quietly breathed a sigh of relief within her heart. Although she always had confidence in Lin Dong, it was obvious that there was still some worry in her heart. After all, no matter what, Lin Dong's opponent was Yuan Kang, the most outstanding person of the younger generation within Eastern Xian region. There's some logic to your confidence. However, do not celebrate too early. Do you really think that Yuan Kang is so easy to deal with? Even Chen Gui was defeated by him previously. Although Lin Dong has many cards up his sleeve, defeating Yuan Kang will still not be an easy task to accomplish. Wu Kun said while shaking his head. Yes, Yuan Kang is not easy to deal with. Against Chen Gui, even I only have a 60% chance of victory. However, he was actually able to defeat him. It's obvious that Yuan Kang has some hidden aces up his sleeve. Hence, it's still too early to conclude who will win or lose. Gently nodding her head, Ling Qingshu chimed in. After hearing Wu Kun's words, Su-Ruo was still thinking about refuting. However, after listening to Ling Qingshu's explanation, she could only nod her head. After remaining silent for a while, she spoke out again. However, I still believe that Big Brother Lin Dong will win. Hearing her words, Wu Kun was speechless. He could not understand why Su-Ru would treat Lin Dong as an invincible battle god. When she heard Su-Ru's reply, Ling Qingshu's veil faintly shook. Seemingly smiling faintly, she looked towards the blazing array a distance away in the sky. She wished to see exactly who would have the final laugh in this fierce battle between titans. Bang! Within the blazing light array that had completely filled his sight, Yuan Kang's expression appeared slightly grim. The metal sword in his hand suddenly moved, a sword chi slammed into the blazing light array. However, they only managed to cause a few ripples to form on the light array, and there were no indications of it breaking at all. Evidently, this burning sky array was indeed rather extraordinary, and was actually able to trap him within it. With your strength, even if you have the burning sky cauldron, how much of its power can you utilize? After his attack had achieved nothing, Yuan Kang steadied his heart. He looked towards the far-off Lin Dong with a chilling gaze and mocked with a sneer. From some ancient texts, Yuan Kang knew that in old man Fen Tian's time, he had used the burning sky cauldron to extinguish several powerful practitioners. However, it was obvious that the current Lin Dong was simply nowhere near that level. It's enough to deal with you. Lin Dong sent a faint smile towards Yuan Kang. Without any desire to continue wasting words with him, Lin Dong's hand seal changed. The hovering burning sky cauldron started to revolve as it descended. Its lid came off, before it started to rapidly increase its rotation speed. An extremely berserk and scorching scarlet light was crazily gathered at the mouth of the cauldron. It was obvious that an extremely powerful attack was being prepared. Since you have that much confidence, I'll let you watch me break this array. Let's see what else you will have after that. Upon seeing this scene, a sinister and cold light arose within Yuan Kang's eyes. With a jolt of his body, boundless and vast Yuan power suddenly whizzed out from within his body. He then curled two of his fingers as he thrust them at the open space. Yuan God Codex, Yuan God Sword Finger. A low roar accompanied Yuan Kang's action and abruptly resounded across the sky. In the next instant, everyone saw a resplendent light suddenly gather at his fingertips and rapidly transform into an extremely enormous light sword. As his gaze turned frosty, his fingers slashed downwards. The light sword contained an extremely frightening destructive power as it ferociously slashed down on the flaming light barrier. Snort! Upon seeing this, Lin Dong roared coldly. Soon after, his feet moved in a mysterious and profound way in the air. Boundless Yuan power started to radiate out of him as a gigantic figure of light proceeded to take shape behind him. When the light figure was formed, a fighting spirit that blotted the skies erupted like a storm, causing a change in everyone's expressions. Martial Emperor Law, Destruction Fist. Lin Dong's mysterious footwork suddenly stopped. His expression turned serious as he sent a fist rumbling forward. The light figure behind him had also sent a fist rumbling forward. In the next moment, a gigantic fist that seemed to be condensed from fighting spirit that blotted the skies whizzed down from the sky. It charged into the array and smashed head-on against the light sword. Bang! Wild and violent energy fluctuations erupted and swept out, causing numerous ripples on the barrier. Yet, it was still unable to break the barrier. Martial Emperor Law. Within the array, shock flooded Yuan Kang's eyes as he stared at the light figure behind Lin Dong that was giving off an overwhelming amount of fighting spirit. A somewhat incredulous look appeared within his eyes. There were quite a few ancient treasure stashes in unique Devil region, yet there were only a few famous ones. The Burning Sky stash was one of them, and another was the Martial Emperor Ancient Treasury. It was said that within this ancient treasury was the martial art created from a lifetime's worth of the Martial Emperor's blood and sweat, the Martial Emperor Law. Such a martial art could only be stronger than the three great divine codexes of their Yuan Gate. This explained why he felt so shocked when he learned that Lin Dong had obtained such a martial art. This bastard! At this time, even Yuan Kang could no longer bear it and curse it in his heart. Why was this fellow so lucky? Not only did the Burning Sky Cauldron land in his hands, even the Martial Emperor Law, that no one had seen before, was now an item in his purse. Lin Dong looked at Yuan Kang, who had an ugly expression on face. A cold smirk appeared at the corners of his mouth. He had recently acquired this Martial Emperor Law. However, his talent in martial arts had obviously far exceeded that of the young brothers. Therefore, although he was unable to reach the same level of proficiency he had with the Green Heaven materialized dragon art, what he had displayed was already countless times better than the young brothers. Furthermore, he was only at the initial stage. Yet, one already had an inkling of the tyrannical might of this martial art. In the future, this would become one of his strongest killing moves. Now, it's time for you to obediently experience the might of this burning sky array. Despite Lin Dong's usual calmness, he still greatly coveted this thing. A spirit emblem could only be formed when an extremely powerful expert died. Gathered within the spirit emblem was the vast amount of energy that belonged to the powerful expert when he was alive. In other words, it could be considered as an extremely unique natural treasure. However, this treasure used humans as its most basic ingredient. A spirit emblem was void of any intelligence. Normally speaking, it would rely on its own instincts to find a person with the highest likelihood of merging with it. An example was what occurred at the Supreme Purity Celestial Pond. The spirit emblem chose Ling Qingshu and not Lin Dong. This caused the latter to feel exceptionally helpless. Although he might be able to forcefully snatch it away, something that was obtained reluctantly would have difficulty attaining the most perfect effect. The owner of a spirit emblem might not match up to a reincarnator, but it brought tremendous benefits. After all, a reincarnation stage expert was quite rare even during ancient times. Over the years, Lin Dong only knew one reincarnator, and that was Ying Huan Huan. On the other hand, spirit emblems were much more plentiful. Of course, one would require a great amount of luck in order to obtain one. At the very least, Lin Dong, who had coveted this object for a long time, had never obtained one. The spirit emblem contained an extremely vast amount of pure energy. This energy would gradually merge into the body of its holder as his strength rose. The training progress of those who possesses a spirit emblem would also be much faster compared to ordinary people. Additionally, during certain emergencies, one would be able to activate the strength of the spirit emblem to temporarily boost one's strength in order to get through a dangerous situation. It was rumored that in other regions that were even larger than the Eastern Xian region, even spirit emblems would be auctioned at some extremely large-scale auctions. However, the price one had to pay would likely be quite terrifying. From this, it was possible to see that this item known as the spirit emblem was rather rare. Therefore, explaining how shocked Lin Dong was when he saw a spirit emblem surfacing on Yuan Kang's forehead. I never imagined that Yuan Kang possesses a spirit emblem. Wu Kun enviously looked towards the sky from the mountain top. Immediately, he glanced at Su Ruo beside him. His status was quite high amongst the disciples of Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace, and he was naturally aware of certain information. One example was the fact that Su Ruo was also in possession of a spirit emblem. No wonder this fellow was able to become one of the most outstanding younger generation members in Eastern Xian region. It turns out that he has a spirit emblem assisting him. How unfair! Su Ruo's little face was a little ugly as she spoke in an indignant manner. As someone who also possessed a spirit emblem, she was clearly aware of just how advantageous this thing was when training. From the situation, it was obvious that Yuan Kang had activated the spirit emblem's power. With this, things would undoubtedly become rather troublesome for Lin Dong. Wu Kun involuntarily felt a little helpless when he saw Su Ruo's indignant expression. He really wanted to remind her, "Did you forget that you also possess such a thing in your body? Where could one find absolute fairness in this world?" At times, having the luck to obtain a spirit emblem was also a kind of strength that belonged to oneself. However, Lin Dong is likely going to be in danger now. Wu Kun lifted his head and looked at the distant young figure standing atop the crimson cauldron. His eyes contained some admiration. Regardless of the result, Lin Dong's reputation would definitely soar within the Eastern Xian region. With the 8 Yuan Nirvana stage strength, he was actually able to force the initial profound life stage Yuan Kang to such a state. Such ability was truly stunning. To the side, extremely faint worry flashed across Ling Qingshu's eyes. Although Lin Dong had numerous methods he could employ, there was still a large gap between him and Yuan Kang. If Lin Dong had not relied on the Great Desolation scripture to absorb the life force energy from within a dozen miles, he would perhaps be unable to fight with Yuan Kang to such an extent. Now that Yuan Kang had revealed his final trump card, activating the spirit emblem, his strength had soared tremendously. Lin Dong's current situation was clearly a rather worrying one. The entire place clearly trembled slightly because of the spirit emblem that Yuan Kang had activated. At the Dao sect area, the faces of Ying Xiaoxiao and the rest began to lose their joy. In its place was an extremely worried expression. The change in the situation was a little too quick. He was forced to fully activate it in the end. Lingjun gazed at the sky and smiled faintly. Looks like the battle is going to be over soon. Earlier, even Chen Gui only managed to force Boss to use a sliver of his spirit emblem power. Now that his spirit emblem is fully activated, Lin Dong will definitely die. Lei Qian laughed in a sinister manner. Once Lin Dong is killed, Dao sect will definitely fall into disarray. Previously, I have not killed to my heart's satisfaction. It is just as well that we can do anything we want here. This time around, let's kill a few more. We will kill them until the Dao sect disciples will wet themselves when they see our Yuan Gate disciples in future. Lei Qian laughed heartily. His laughter was filled with a perverse killing desire. Ominous glints flickered in the eyes of the surrounding Yuan Gate disciples when they heard this. All of them grinned evilly as they nodded. Spirit emblem, huh? How unexpected. In the sky, Lin Dong deeply breathed in. He gazed at the flickering light emblem on Yuan Kang's head as he spoke. Tell me, how do you want me to kill you? Yuan Kang patted his somewhat tattered clothes. His current image was a little ragged, and this caused a murderous desire to swiftly gather in his eyes. He stared at Lin Dong and smiled. His smile was filled with malevolence that could not be hidden. An icy look flashed across Lin Dong's eyes when he heard this. However, before he could speak, his pupils slightly contracted as his body pulled back. Swoosh! The space in front of Lin Dong became distorted the moment he withdrew. A ghost-like figure had already appeared. The metal sword in his hand was accompanied by an extremely formidable sword aura as it pierced towards Lin Dong's throat at lightning speed. Yuan Kang's speed was even fiercer and quicker than earlier. With a sword slashing at him, Lin Dong did not have any time to dodge. Both of his hands quickly crossed each other and guarded in front of his throat. Kai? The metal sword hacked at Lin Dong's arms. However, no sparks appeared this time around. A bloody wound directly appeared on Lin Dong's arm, as fresh blood came flowing out. Clearly, Yuan Kang's strength had soared after activating the spirit emblem. His formidable attack was actually able to break Lin Dong's powerful defenses. Lin Dong seized the opportunity and withdrew quickly. Soon after, he glanced at the sword wound on his arm. Although it felt a little painful, it would not be much of a hindrance to him. It was likely that if it was not for his improved green heaven materialized dragon skill, Yuan Kang's sword would have crippled one of his arms. Lin Dong raised his gaze and looked toward the mouth of the burning sky cauldron. Indescribably hot and wild scarlet light had already gathered to the limit. The resulting terrifying temperature immediately caused distortions to form in the nearby space. Burning sky cauldron, a desolate burning ignition. A fierce and cold glint filled Lin Dong's eyes. With a change of his hand seals, he suddenly pointed towards Yuan Kang. In the next instant, the burning sky cauldron faintly vibrated, before a humming noise started to ring out unceasingly. Bang! The burning sky cauldron did not continue to vibrate for long. At the mouth of the cauldron, scarlet light that blotted the sky started spewing out like an erupting volcano. It swept outwards and shot explosively towards Yuan Kang like a river of lava. Bang bang! As the river of lava flowed out, the space around it was completely distorted. The frightening fluctuations created caused the expressions of countless people within the area to change. At the Yuan Gate area, the eyes of Lei Qian and Lingjun were brimming with horror. The fluctuations clearly informed them that if they were the ones trapped within the array, they would definitely be burned to crisp. Bang bang! The scarlet lava-like river finally shot viciously into the burning sky array. The array instantly flickered rapidly, causing the temperature to become increasingly terrifying. As for Yuan Kang, his figure was rapidly engulfed within it. Suppress! As he gazed at this scene, Lin Dong violently clenched his fist. In the next instant, the scarlet energy within the array rapidly turned ice cold. As if the lava had solidified, it transformed into a several hundred feet tall lava structure that sealed Yuan Kang within it. We've won. When they saw this scene, the Dao sect disciples instantly started to crazily shout and cheer in ecstasy. Pang Tong and the rest were so emotional that their bodies started to tremble. Ying Xiaoxiao and Ying Huan looked at each other. Although they did not cheer in ecstasy, there was an obviously unconcealable joy within their eyes. It is settled, it was totally silent on the mountain peak, as Wu Kun looked in amazement towards the sky with an unbelievable expression in his eyes. Ling Qingzhu faintly wrinkled her forehead, and stared with rapt attention at the gigantic lava structure. In the next instant, her pupils suddenly contracted, before she slowly shook her head and said, "Not yet. He's truly hard to deal with." At the same time, Lin Dong, who was in midair, muttered. As his words rang out, faint cracks suddenly started extending from deep within the lava structure. In the next instant, a dazzling light suddenly shot out from within. The entire lava structure completely shattered and exploded, as broken rocks violently shot across the sky. Ling Dong retreated. He beckoned with his hand as the burning sky cauldron moved below his feet, before he proceeded to stare at the dazzling light with a slightly grim look in his eyes. At that spot was a figure whose clothing was in shreds. He gave off a murderous aura that blotted the skies as he slowly walked out. To force me to such a state, of the younger generation within Eastern Xian region, Lin Dong, you're the first? A voice brimming with incomparable malevolence and killing intent echoed in the sky. As everyone shifted their gazes, they spotted the figure that was walking out. It was Yuan Kang. Lin Dong's gaze was currently directed towards Yuan Kang. In the next moment, his eyes paused on the latter's forehead. At that spot was a mysterious emblem that was currently sparkling with a dazzling brilliance. The emblem that appeared this time was undoubtedly much clearer than when it had appeared during his fight with Chen Gui. Therefore, when this emblem appeared, it was discovered by many people. Voices of shock and astonishment rang out in succession as people recognized what it was. Spirit emblem? Who? Lin Dong exhaled deeply, as his eyes turned completely serious. Never did he imagine that this Yuan Kang would possess such a powerful trump card. With regards to spirit emblems, they were not foreign to Lin Dong. Back when he was participating in the 100 Empire War, Su Ruo had obtained such an item before. A couple of days earlier, Ling Qingzhu had also obtained a spirit emblem at the bottom of the Supreme Purity Celestial Pond. Let me see just how many times you can block my sword. Yuan Kang's finger wiped the blood on the sword. Soon after, he lifted his head and gave Lin Dong a savage smile. In the next moment, his eyes suddenly turned sinisterly cold as his body transformed into an afterimage after rushing forward. Lin Dong's body trembled as green dragon wings spread out behind him. After which, his speed soared as he swiftly pulled back. Swoosh! Lin Dong's figure had just withdrew, when a dozen feet large sword glow slashed at the spot he was standing at earlier. Subsequently, Yuan Kang's figure appeared. Another attack once again swept towards Lin Dong from all directions. A figure fled while the other gave chase in the sky. Faced with Yuan Kang, whose strength had soared after activating the spirit emblem, it was obvious that even the current Lin Dong was barely able to manage. For a time, Yuan Kang had undoubtedly obtained the upper hand in this situation. The Yuan Gate disciples also roared with laughter at this moment. Some of them even displayed some mocking actions towards the Dao sect direction. This infuriated many Dao sect disciples until their faces turned red. Is he planning to continue fleeing like this? Wu Kun could not help but laugh bitterly as he looked at the sky. Lin Dong was indeed quite fast. If he wanted to dodge, even the current Yuan Kang would have difficulty killing him. However, could this fleeing continue forever? Ling Qingzhu knitted her brows slightly. Her eyes stared intently at the figure who was continuously pulling back while being chased by Yuan Kang. Her eyes suddenly hardened. After which, she shook her head and softly commented, "He seems to be preparing something." Oh! Wu Kun was stunned. Immediately, he spoke in an extremely doubtful manner. Do you really believe he still has other tricks up his sleeves? Even if he did, will it really be able to defeat Yuan Kang who possess a spirit emblem? Ling Qingzhu bit her lips gently. She was also uncertain. However, given her understanding of Lin Dong, he would not do anything pointless. Since he had taken action, it meant that he truly had a card up his sleeve. Nevertheless, she was uncertain about whether it would have any impact. Do you only know how to keep dodging like this? Where is your imposing manner from before? In the sky, Yuan Kang once again slashed at the empty air. He could not help but have a rather dark expression on his face as he laughed coldly and ridiculed. However, Lin Dong completely ignored his ridicule. All he did was gently shake his hand that was under his sleeve. You might be able to dodge, but where can your Dao sect disciples hide? A sinisterly cold expression suddenly flashed across Yuan Kang's eyes. He turned his body and swung his arm downwards. 100 feet large sharp sword Qi suddenly changed direction and swept towards the Dao sect disciples below. With his current strength, it was obvious that none of the Dao sect disciples could block it. Hence, the expressions of the Dao sect disciples drastically changed upon seeing this. Ying Xiaoxiao's expression was rather ugly. She quickly clenched her teeth and was about to forcefully block the attack when a skinny figure suddenly appeared in the sky above her. After which, the figure directly used his body to receive the sword attack. Kai? A foot-long bloody wound appeared on Lin Dong's shoulder and extended to his abdomen. Fresh blood dripped from it, causing him to appear exceptionally miserable. Senior brother Lin Dong. The Dao sect disciples below had a huge change in their expressions when they saw this. Their fists were all clenched tightly, while their eyes were scarlet red. Truly a courageous one. Yuan Kang mocked as he watched this scene. Soon after, he asked in a sinister manner, "Are you still going to run now? There is no longer a need to." Lin Dong suddenly stretched his body under Yuan Kang's sinister gaze. He glanced indifferently at the injury on his body, before he lifted his head and gazed at Yuan Kang. Lin Dong grinned, his smile was filled with a savage and brutal aura. "This is because the one who will need to run away is you." Lin Dong extended both of his hands after smiling savagely. An extremely mysterious light formation surfaced on his palm. After which, he bit the tip of his tongue and some essence blood was spat out and landed on the light formation. The formation swelled, and within a couple of breaths' time, it had turned into a several 100 feet large formation that covered the entire place. A ripple that caused one's soul to feel a little afraid slowly spread apart. The enormous light array enveloped the land. Lin Dong's face had also turned deathly pale. He lifted his head, his eyes contained a scarlet luster as he malevolently looked at Yuan Kang. Soon after, an ice-cold emotionless voice echoed. "I have said it before. I will make everyone from Yuan Gate accompany those dead Dao sect juniors and seniors in hell." This video will end here.